Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, here with Brandon. Couple of things to get to today. We had our first local event since quarantine started last Saturday. We're going to talk about that, as well as talking about what role Date Alive, the new set, could end up playing in the upcoming meta. And also, is it Date Alive, Date A-Live, Date Alive? I didn't watch the show. I know nothing about it.
To be fair, the show doesn't tell you.
Coming from the guy who binged the show because the set came out and he decided to buy a playset.
So, well, this is the thing. So the show is about a guy who essentially has to go on dates with these spirits in order to prevent them from destroying the world.
I'm going to be honest with you. The only thing I care about with this source material, as far as it goes, is that Kurumi has a really cool dress.
Fair enough.
That's all I've got. I don't have any other opinions about this franchise, because I know nothing else about it.
Half the reason for binging it was that I was trying to figure out who these characters were, and half the reason for binging it was because I hadn't seen Kurumi until like episode 8 out of 12 in the first season.
Wow. Yeah, so Brandon has sold his soul to this game. He bought a playset of whatever this is going to end up being. And we're going to get to that, because this set is potentially very disruptive, and it brings up more questions about the future state of the meta and what Bushy's going to do with the English meta. In the meantime, before we get to that, we had an event last weekend.
We did. We had the thank you event.
Yes. Our version of the thank you event was last weekend. We had 10 players, which is the most I've ever seen at our locals. We usually have between 4 and 8. So I was really excited to see 10.
Absolutely. And we had people that were there from the people that weren't there this time that were at the one before in March. So yep. Our locals is growing, which is interesting.
Yeah, somehow we came out of quarantine mode with more people than we had going in, which that's good.
That's awesome. For me, that shows that the game's still growing, even in the midst of pandemic.
Yeah, because this is exactly the kind of thing that might cripple other games. Moment of silence for Buddy Fight.
Magia Record English.
Oh, rip Magia Record, which I think we're still getting, presumably.
Oh yeah, we're still getting it.
Now we're gonna get a set for a mobile game that doesn't exist in our language anymore, so that's gonna be interesting. Getting back to it, you got top 3.
I did get top 3.
You took Slime. You did very well. Tell us about your run a little bit.
So yeah, I ended up getting top 3. Went 3-1. Ended up losing to Attack on Titan, which was a really good matchup. It was a really close game at the end, because Slime does really well compressing. The first half of the game, it was really interesting. My deck did not play nice with me. I got all of the things at the wrong timing, so it was really odd start for the deck. The deck is designed to recover well, and it did. And so I was able to make a comeback run. It just ended up not being enough. I was able to survive a turn of Mikasa level 3 and survive it with only taking, I think I took 4 damage in total on that turn. I was canceling left and right to be able to try to mount another attack run that next turn, but it was not enough to be able to finish out the game. The other matchups that I ended up playing against Yuki Last Shot SAO, win that one. That was a little too close for comfort. I, mid-game, forgot about the stock swap in SAO.
Which is hilarious, considering that that's a set that you have so much experience with.
I own the stock swap card in SAO. I brought the stock swap card to the last tournament, but just blanked, and had the conversation with myself and convinced myself that it wasn't the stock swap, and that nearly cost me the game. But I was able to push with Slime to be able to get the win there. I also played against GGO Bodyguard deck, and essentially just compressed against it to win the game. And to be fair, that's what Slime does, but focus more on compression versus early plays. So I was canceling more, because they couldn't minimize damage because they were swinging against literally empty slots, so they couldn't modulate their damage at all. Which then ended up being a similar route that I took against Apocrypha as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It was not. I didn't play against you, Colton, but I did play somebody else that was in Apocrypha, and they were unable to close out the game because, again, compression and being able to refresh with a lot of cancels. So
yeah. What was their level 3 endgame again? You told me at one point, but I forgot.
Yeah, they played the Jean combo at level 1. I believe they had the early play Jean. They didn't run any Astolfo. I believe they had the Mordreds,
Yeah.
but I don't think they had Jack.
Okay. Yeah, Jack is more of like a complementary piece anyway.
Well, he had was it La Pucelle ruler?
Okay, yeah.
The Encore Step burn one.
Yep.
But he didn't have Fafnir.
Okay.
So
he read it the same way that I do. Basically,
yeah.
just like its own kind of vanilla bird one.
Yeah. But then I was able to close that one out. I actually pushed for 7 damage against that deck.
Okay.
Mainly because I think I'm pretty sure I did a stock swap against it too, which helped. Because they actually built up a decent amount of stock, and then I buried 3 climaxes, I think, with the stock swap. But those were the 4 games that I faced off against. What about you, Colton? How did your run go?
You know, I was happy with the deck. I ended up going 1-3. The deck did fine. The deck wasn't the problem. The problem was me. First game, I played against a Konosuba build that I've never seen before. It was a Wiz Darkness build, the Wiz at level 3, the level 1 Darkness combo. I basically got what I wanted. I got my combo off. Everything rotated really nicely. I compressed really well. I was able to lock my opponent out of level 3 because that Wiz combo is actually pretty insane. Spoilers for something I'm working on for a future video. Game 2, I played Gurren Lagann, and I should have won that game, but I just botched the whole thing at level 2 and misplayed, and I also played that same AOT deck. Props to Lisa for winning the event. I struggled with triggering in that game, which usually triggering in Apocrypha isn't the worst possible thing because, you're drawing and salvaging off the trigger. So, very rarely will you get an empty trigger, which is good. But in that game, I triggered 2 salvage triggers with an empty waiting room, which was not fun. In a row, back to back. Had a hard time digging them all out because at level 1, there isn't a lot to dig with Apocrypha. Basically, what you have is the Ricky and the Drop Searcher. It can be hard to dig deep until later in the game when you start getting your early plays down. So I really struggled to fix my compression at that point. Triggering is something that you can't control no matter what your deck is. If you trigger, you trigger. That's just because everyone runs 8 out of 50. And I couldn't get my recovery options off before I got stuck from 2-4 with literally no climaxes in deck. So, which is a little frustrating because I actually played really well in that game for not getting my combo off and not getting much compression help. But yeah, despite not getting any help from my climaxes, I was pretty happy with the way the deck played. If I'm not going to get my combo off, I at least was able to get other things together, which was my primary concern going in. Like, if I don't get my combo, how am I going to compete, especially against, Attack on Titan? And I did. I was actually really happy with how the deck was still able to rotate. I was still able to get cards into hand and have the resources necessary to have a shot at swinging for game. If I had survived that last turn from 2-4, I would have had a realistic chance to swing for game. So, because I had all the combo pieces in hand. So not upset really with how that one went. Obviously, you don't want to trigger as many climaxes as you do sometimes, but that's not something you can control. Aside from that, I was pretty happy with it. And then the last game I played No Game, No Life, and had more triggering problems. Didn't pay them out effectively. I didn't play very well. I did get to use that money counter, though, and I was able to finally prove to myself that the money counter is actually worth it, because that saved me like 6 damage off of one of those restanding No Game, No Life finishers, so that was pretty neat. But yeah, so I ended up 1-3. Again, happy with the deck. The deck performed just fine. The problem was me. I tend to get in my own head at events, and I make it harder for myself than I need to. I can tell that I'm rusty from having no competitive play for the last 5 months, like, in person with cards at a tournament environment. But we do have events in September and October, so I'll have my chance to play better going forward, I guess.
With the prizes, I think we were able to finally clean out the backlog of Batman Ninja booster packs.
Thank God. And of course, you pulled one of the grappling hooks.
Well, of course. I mean, to be fair, it's an uncommon.
Still, you pulled
the meme.
Yeah. Anyway. So that's how our thank you event went.
And tell us, what did you guys get a chance to participate in your thank you events locally? If you did, what happened? What were some of the results of that? Let us know.
Yeah, because we're, trying to see what people are playing, because I'm kind of curious to see what different metas around the country and around the world are looking like in English now that we're actually getting into something that looks like a competitive environment. So tell us about it in comments. So let's talk about DAL. Not so much what's in the set, because we've talked about what's in the set. Link in the doobly-doo.
But also, like, hey, other people are putting out, like, actual, like, reviews of the entire set. Pittsburgh, go check out their stuff. That's fantastic, too.
Yeah, they probably make the best Weiss stuff on YouTube these days. So we know that Day Day Live is good. That's not even really a question at this point. It did really well at Anime Evo. It was a significant chunk of the meta at Anime Evo, which was a JP event. And granted, this is not coming out until March, so we have, 7 months or something until it's actually out. And it's so easy to get ahead of the meta because, like, we don't even have Overlord actually printed yet. Like, that doesn't come out until next week. So I think it's pretty safe to say that when Day Day Live comes out, based on its performance in the JP meta, and based on how many high-quality players in English are excited about it, I think it has a chance to really shake up the English meta.
I think it's going to be interesting for sure. Well, especially what's happening over in Japan as well, with their tournament structure for the fall. The most heavily represented deck is still Data Live in that context as well.
Yeah. If something is a significant part of the JP meta and it comes to English, it almost by default is going to be significant. And I think that DAL specifically plays very nicely against what is currently good in the English meta.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think one of the biggest parts about it, steal these words from Carmen, because he actually put it together really well. Even if you're not playing the top tier stuff in Data Live and you're using some of the other alternative stuff in it, you still have a good A tier deck because there's so many good cards in the set itself.
And how many sets can say that? I mean, I think the only other set in English that can say that it has multiple A-tier decks is probably Konosuba post Legend of Crimson.
And even then, on top of that, Carmen also pointed out that for AOT, for example, how many sets did it take for AOT to become the top of the meta for a long time? It took 2 sets, right? This is just 1 set of Data Live.
Right.
And all of the cards in the set come from Season 1. I suspect that it actually is the beginnings of a new power creep in the actual, like, game itself. Like, there's a couple of effects that seem very overpowered in comparison to sets that have gone on before. And realistically, with the upcoming sets that we have in the pipeline, we have Heaven's Field Part 2. We have Alicization 2. We have Slime 2. I mean, technically, we have Konosuba coming out with Crimson. Like, we have, especially for those larger sets, we have these new sets incoming. We haven't seen anything released from those sets yet, but if any of those sets have stuff to help power creep with those sets as well, we will have contention in English meta with Data Live. They'll be able to then match these things with the incoming stuff to these already older sets to help keep it relevant, help keep them playable. We have pipeline for that next tier of power creep.
That makes sense. Almost like this is almost like a turnover moment for the meta, in a way.
That's what I suspect from what I see, but who knows? Like, realistically, we're speculating. This is all speculation at this point because we don't have the actual cards printed. I mean, these sets could look more like JoJo's or Overlords versus Data Lives. I mean, to be fair though, like at the same time, when we look at things like AOT, where set 1, it was okay, and it played, but when set 2 came in, it became this monster of a set. The potential that these new releases have is so high that it's worth paying attention to and worth speculating these things so that way we can be ready for when they happen. We got the announcement for Slime 2 before we even got Slime. Slime 2 was announced roughly the same time that it was getting ready to be released in English. The likelihood that that becomes to English is super high, along with Heaven's Feel. Both of those haven't been announced yet for English, along with the other ones that are just getting ready to go into Japan. Like, they haven't been announced yet for English, but since we've gotten the sets prior to it, the likelihood that they come to English is very high.
Right. It seems unlikely we wouldn't get them.
There's very few exceptions to those.
Yeah.
Like re-edit being one of them.
Yeah, and again, like source material seems to be an indicator because we don't in English tend to get things that were manga or VN or light novel. we get the anime adaptation version of the set. It'll be interesting, to say the least. So yeah, that's pretty much it for us, I think, today. If you like listening to us wildly speculate on what the future of the meta of this silly card game is, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will be back with another Clock Talk in 2 weeks. In the meantime, open gameplay on Thursday, no idea what we will be playing. New deck tech on Tuesday, I know what it's going to be and I'm disappointed in myself, followed by gameplay of that deck the following Thursday. So 2 days from now, gameplay, next Tuesday, my deck profile, the Thursday after that, gameplay for that deck profile, and then 2 weeks from now, another one of these Clock Talks, and the cycle continues in perpetuity. If you had a thank you event near you, tell us how it went, because we would love to know. And it helps us understand what people are still playing, so that when we have conversations about the meta, in scare quotes, we have more to go off of. So the conversation is hopefully better and more useful.
Realistically, local meta versus regional meta is different.
That's a whole conversation.
Exactly.
So yeah, in the meantime, as I said, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We will be back on Thursday. Until then, have a good one.
We'll see you then.